Aloha, everyone. How are you today? My name is Jason Schwartz. I am the host of the Maui Neutral Zone. It's anything but neutral. And today we have a terrific guest, a special guest. And you guys know that this is 2020 and we're in the middle of a COVID-19 virus pandemic. But that doesn't stop us from having election season. And in this election season, there are Democrats, Republicans, and there are other parties. One of those other parties is one that I have a lot of feeling for. That's called the Green Party. I don't know if any of you were alive. Some of you were when I ran here on Maui in the 1990s. But here at 2020, I think there are some people running that have very strong and independent voices nationally. And so I am trying to interview some of them. And one of them, a very vital one, is Chad Wilson, who's sitting here with me. Aloha, Chad. Welcome to the show.
Aloha. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Where are you based right now? What are you in?
I'm in
East
Tennessee.
Coast? Tennessee? Oh,
Tennessee.
Okay.
Yeah, just outside of Nashville. I'm actually in the country. So.
Well, my lady friend Ariel was born in Nashville, so.
Oh, very cool. It's a cool place, man. yeah. Tennessee is interesting. And actually, it's good for me to understand the South and be here because I have I guess a lens that a lot of the other candidates don't have. So I think it's important. You know, the red states are important.
Well,
and there's good.
Red states means the Republican states. Blue states means Democrat states, right? Do Greens have any states? We don't have any states yet, huh?
No states.
Okay.
No states.
But the Green seems to be everywhere, you know. What made you be Green Party, and what kind of things made you decide you wanted to run this time to President of the United States?
Well, I voted for Jill Stein back in 2016. I was on the Bernie train. I got into politics like heavy during that season. I'd started getting into it through like the religious side of things because, you know, during Obama's term is when they took the 2 to 7 wars. So they beat the fear drum about Islamophobia. So I was battling a lot of people that I grew up with because my dad's like a Pentecostal preacher, evangelist. So I was getting this emotional response from that. And then of course it led into the 2016 election and then dealing with everything, all the drama that went down with Bernie Sanders campaign. It woke me up in a way that I wasn't expecting. Bernie bent the knee. He wouldn't stand up to the Clintons. He wouldn't stand up to the DNC. And from that point on, it just shifted my understanding of what someone needs to do. There can't be any compromise. You can't say these people are my friends. You can't work with certain people. You have to put your foot down at some point, you know, especially when what they're doing is so bad. So
you're talking about in 2016, Bernie Sanders was running for president against, at the time, Hillary Clinton. And with the way you felt the things happened in the Democrat Party, that Bernie should have stood up and kicked his hind legs and fought for what he felt was important then. And here we are in 2020. And I don't imagine that was specifically, were you running before Bernie dropped out of the race here this time or no?
Oh yeah. No, I gave up on Bernie at the convention. It was such a big deal for everything to have come out the way it did. You know, with WikiLeaks dropping the DNC email leaks, because they're leaks, they weren't hacks. He had a real opportunity, you know, strategy wise, and however you wanted to look at it. If he would have put his backbone into it, then he could have made something happen. And of course, the same kind of attitude or behavior, or you know, he bent the knee again this time around. So I didn't pay any attention to Bernie. You know, I know that people kind of went that route and went and tried it again, and tried to, play the insider game, or as far as try to change the DNC through the inside. So I was done with that. It was in 2018 because I was doing these discussion talks through Zoom actually with people across the country and we did it for months and months. And a lot of people that were involved in the progressive and independent media, progressive world, we talked about everything, went through everything, and that's where I kind of got engaged with Greens, because the Tennessee Greens is not super active. So my interaction was with some California and Arizona Greens mainly. So the Arizona Green that I knew brought to my attention, or to everybody's attention, that Jesse Ventura was talking about running. This was in 2018, and he was getting all this press about it. And of course, we're talking politics, we're talking all these different things, and going through and it was really awesome to hear a bunch of people talk. And that's just a side note. But anyway, so Jesse Ventura said he was going to run, or said he was thinking about it with the Green Party. So a group of us got together and started having these discussions called a Venturathon, basically, about drafting him, just about having the conversation, what it would do for the Green Party, what kind of attention it would bring, what kind of energy, what, the positives and the negatives, and trying to hear what people felt. And my first real interaction that way was, there was a lot of vitriol actually coming from some of the insiders in the party. And I thought it was just, kind of a few different players, toxic things. But that's what got me more invested in the internal issues of the party. So as time went on, and Jesse, because he was gonna say something by a certain time, and he didn't. And I realized he wasn't going to run, or I didn't think he was going to run. And I started seeing everything that was going down already in the primary, seeing kind of the drama that was happening prior to me even getting in. So I knew that we talked about it for hours and hours about what the party needed. And I felt like I had a good idea, especially because it's branding and marketing is the biggest thing, the way we present ourselves. But I decided to jump in the race and bring my energy into it. And when I got in, it just ended up being a lot more of internal issues, in my opinion. Well, not just my opinion. I mean, it is what it is. You can't build the party off a bad foundation. And it seemed like there was a lot of people that were trying to sweep some things under the rug rather than address it head on.
Now, this is 2016, right?
No, this is the 20.
This is 2020. Okay.
2019. Yeah. Once I started running, I got in the race in September. And so when I got in the race, it gave me a different perspective than before I got in the race, obviously. I started really understanding the mechanics of the way the party ran, that it's a federation. My understanding and education on the party mechanisms was very small. But I realized that there's not a lot of people in the party that really know all the pieces and how it works. And so that's what the real issues come in is there's a lot of people that are using our decentralization value as a way to manipulate some of these committees in order to get certain things passed, in order to control the narrative of the party. If you see that our party hasn't promoted the primary once, I think they shared the September debate maybe on the Facebook page, but since then there's been no promotion of it at all. The only candidate that they're even promoting is a candidate that's not even was going to run Green, but ended up going independent and didn't even get an endorsement from the Green Party yet. But we're sharing it all over our GP media, and not only that, the people that are getting paid on that campaign are part of the media committee. So I know it's kind of a lot to throw at you already.
So no. So basically, you're talking that the Green Party's internal politics aren't a lot to your liking, and so you're standing up as a candidate, but also you're standing up so that the Green Party will be now, quote, officially taking a look at what's going on in their own ranks to, I want to say, are they mirroring activity in these other parties that you haven't been comfortable with and you thought the Green Party was somehow different and coming in a better way that was more independent? When you see people on the committees that are on the a candidate's staff, it makes you kind of wonder what's going on here. It's a little bit more fixed than you'd like it to be. Is that what I'm
Well,
getting?
well, yeah, and it would be one thing if there was just one or two, but it seems like there's so many of these people that are across committees, and there's so many co-chairs, and there's so many like little details that are going on, that it's just overrun. So this is on purpose. This is what I found out, is
So,
that they're purposely basically trying to throttle growth, because if it grows too fast, then they lose their control over how they direct, the energy and the narrative of the party, because each individual state is separate, right? The whole decentralization, but the party's the national party is what is the face of the party, because people are mostly engaged in your presidential primary or your presidential. That's when the party actually raises its most money, and that again comes from the national media. So what's been done is that people use the party's media influence to qualify and legitimize their outside organizations. So for the last 4 years, they've been doing all these shows on streaming from Jill Stein's page and non-affiliated content, but they've been sharing it on the GP page. So it's not really been growing our party. We're not putting things out that are benefiting us, that keep bringing people back here. So it's like in September, right? They had an eco-socialism event, and that
so
eco-socialism. Go ahead.
no. So what I'm understanding is, in some ways, it's above my head. Meaning, it's the politics of party and all that goes on when people get involved in politics. Is they're pushing their own private agenda through party, and you're not feel it's getting the Green Party's name out in a way that is, I want to say, generic, and really talking about the roots of what it is that make it so unique. What do you find? I mean, obviously you're running under the agenda. What about being a Green fills you? I mean, let's say we get it. Just like the rest of them, you may or may not get to the final, but let's now say people are going to see this and they're going to say, okay, hey, there's that guy. I'd like to vote. Hopefully you can get in position to be seen. But what is it that you feel as president, or what is it that the Greens with you as candidate can offer this nation that is unique? Or I guess that's the way. Or if you don't think you're going to win because of the sheer volume, what message and style do you want to add to the presidency and this whole discussion? Obviously, you're running with some specifics in mind, and I just want to get a feeling for what's at the core of you and what you want to do.
For sure. Well, the main thing is the four pillars, right? So I do music. I'm an artist. Like my background is music. I was in the marching band, so I played trumpet. So I really understand how an orchestra works, how all these different pieces work, and how everything's supposed to flow. So that's the kind of the way that I approach things from a production standpoint. So I'm looking at it from, okay, well, what is the disconnect between people and the party? Why aren't people coming to the party? So that my first thing is to say, okay, be honest with what kind of what are the pieces. And the biggest part has to do with the gatekeeping and the vibe, the energy, the culture. We need a cultural coup for a political coup. And because it's important to understand that people's the energy, if we're not building energy, building excitement, opening, having a place to feel open to discuss, open to work out these things that people feel are miseducated on. We need to be the ones that have the high ground, that understand why people are propagandized, right? So we don't need to take the approach to always be just angry directly. We need to be empathetic, not condoning of behavior, but understanding the building blocks. And that's why I think censorship, propaganda, and corruption are the three issues that could unite the country. Because if we get rid of those three things, then it actually gives us a real level playing field to discuss things. And it's everything that everybody wants to get rid of. Everybody's tired of the corruption. That you're going to hear that in the rural area. I mean, the party's, okay, so the party's values, the 4 pillars is what brought me in, as far as I looked at it and said, wow, these 4 pillars could really be something
So
that people
people
feel
can look
comfortable.
up what those 4 pillars are, but
It's
give me a specific. I mean, I'm
ecological wisdom, justice for all, grassroots democracy, and nonviolence.
so let's take them just for a quick second.
Okay.
Um, Justice for all.
And, well,
We
and they
would be
say,
very remiss if we didn't note that right today that there are demonstrations and protests and violence that many will say are not in any way related to the people that are protesting, but
right,
they're creating violence to almost diminish the power of this discussion about justice for all.
right.
If you were in presidency right now, what would you do? What would you do based on now?
Well, okay. So again, this is the first time in history that we've been able to communicate in such a way. Now, a
No.
lot of people look at social media as toxic because people are arguing and always fighting and stuff. Remember, this is the first time in history that we're giving people a voice. I mean, and it's not because it's not just 2 people talking in a room. It's like a public platform, and I look at it like ants, right? How ants work together as a unit. We haven't yet figured out how to work as a unit right here. So I look at it as language, to understand each identity, each culture, break them down, and be able to use language and use specific people within those cultures to back trace to the policies and to the dynamic, what's creating the dynamic, in order to make someone feel like they're heard. Because again, it's not about condoning someone's behavior. It's about acknowledging the way that someone feels, because we're feeling something. Even if we're feeling something off something that's not real, we're being taught, the fear drum's being beaten in order to, I mean, that's the whole thing. Like, so there's more people in jail for cannabis than all violent crimes combined. Blacks and minorities 4 to 5 times as likely to be incarcerated, even though whites, blacks use at the same rate. So right there, just cannabis alone is going to empty out so many of our people out of prisons. So we need to look at, and I try to use movie references. So I talk about Doc Brown from Back to the Future. You're not thinking 4th dimensionally. It's like a butterfly effect. We have to change certain things at the root level, so time can change these things, because time makes more converts than reason.
So I'm breaking in only because I'm
unpack it.
So
Yes, there's a
here
lot.
we are now. No, that's all right. I get it. But here we are now. We have a president. We have a disruption in many states. And now you're president. And first of all, you're going to address the nation. What are you going to say to them? And what are you going to do? I'm going to assume you'd like to stop the violence and unify the people. A little different than our present sitting president, who seems to put out a message that encourages violence and encourages an us and them mentality. Like I say, I'm trying to put you in a real life situation here in some ways, because when I hear justice for all and we see this all going on right now, I know that we can talk in theoreticals, but I'm trying to get something a little practical to
Gotcha.
give a difference and show who and where you are in that kind of way.
Absolutely. Remember, so and it gets the big picture. There's a lot of things that when you make your decision, or when you make a strategy move, or you have to think about all the pieces of the puzzle. So that's the problem right now on the quote unquote left. We're forgetting about the Piper strategy, all these things that came out in WikiLeaks, all these things that led up to giving us Donald Trump. Because if Obama, if the Democrats had given us, if they were so great, then we wouldn't be in the problem where we are now. And the problem is that every so often, it's always the last guy was always better. I mean, look at the way that they've rehabilitated George Bush. So I'm looking at and trying to understand the pulse of people and understand the different pockets, because most people are in the 2-party head mentality, where they have to pick a side because their side's the lesser of evil and it's the devil they know. So, there's a bunch of different pockets of people. So I'm the idea is to have a strategy that snowballs into really building a relationship. So I look at the Pied Piper strategy and all these different things with the propaganda, what the propaganda machine's been doing with Russiagate, and we can get into all that. So Russiagate.
Well, I'm going to slow down a bit.
Gotcha,
When you say Pied Piper strategy, let our
yeah.
audience have an idea what you mean by that.
Okay, the Pied Piper strategy was the Clinton strategy for the election in 2016. So what they did is they said, okay, we're going to pick a candidate, either Ben Carson, Ted Cruz, or Donald Trump, and we're going to throw all our weight behind them, money, energy through our media to make them the nominee. So that way it makes it easier for Clinton to beat in the general. So this is how they manipulate. So not only did the Democratic Party basically rigged the Democratic Party's nomination, it did the same thing with the RNC because of the way that they put everything out. And so that's what we're finding out now, that the FISA warrant, them spying on Trump, that Russiagate, all this stuff was bullshit. So this the point I want to mention there is that when a broken clock is right twice a day, you still have to acknowledge that it's still the time, right? So when I was saying before, you have to acknowledge what people are feeling and where things are coming from, is what the propaganda machine has done is built this Russian lie off of the original goalpost, which is the DNC leaks. And that was the excuse in order to start this whole, well, it was this whole wave. And again, they've moved the goalpost, but they've beat the fear drum and they've given legitimacy to that specific fight. So when they're pushing Russiagate, as in Russia hacked our election, Russia hacked the DNC, all these different things that, what they're doing is they're giving legitimate reasons for Trump's base to fight against something. So what you're doing is you're really building up their anger. You're really building up things. So the idea is to take the wind out of the sails, right? Find out what the one or two reasons are people are picking their side, and give them what they want. Just give them a different vehicle. And what I've been learning and listening is that people are tired of the corruption. And as an example of something that would completely change the playing field, would completely revolutionize, if the left were to give up Obama, to give up the Clintons, in a way to say, we condemn them and actually call out their actions, the behavior of what happened, with the 2 to 7 wars, bailing out Wall Street, the spying powers, the prosecuting journalism, the abuse of powers with this FISA warrant, all this kind of stuff. The point is, if we did that, again, it would take the wind out of the sails of the Trumpsters. And not only that, it would give us the room to really build up the left, because the people that are exploiting all these things would be out of the way. And go ahead.
I'm hearing, I hear a lot of conversation about politics, but I'm like trying to get a practical answer. Here I am. I'm a governor, and I'm in Minnesota, and I have a riot in my town because a police officer put his leg on somebody's neck, and he died. And now there's all kinds of stuff going on in the street. And just this morning, we hear a president who's telling the governors they're not tough enough and bringing in the National Guard, and you got to be tough. So I'm looking to put you in president. Now, here you go. Bang, you're president. What are you going to do? How are you going to unify, and what are you going to put out to the country? I appreciate that you're saying what you were just saying. Politics is wild. If the Democrats would throw under the bus the people that are culpable in their group, it would stop the other side from being able to use that, and we can actually get at some issues that aren't related to that stuff.
Because nobody trusts each other. Nobody respects each other.
So now I'm just saying, let's throw all that out the window. You're now president. I'm trying to say, okay, we're trying to give you the role of president. As president now, you'd lead by talking about justice for all and working on things to bring up equality. I'm not exactly sure how you do it or what you're thinking, but you're also talked about ecological wisdom. To me, that means do things that make sense, that are logical, so that we don't completely destroy the
Well, everything around us.
ecosystem. So our kids and our grandkids are left this decimated place where we took advantage of right now to make profit and to feed lots of people with all, I guess I'm not getting into the specifics, but ecological wisdom and justice for all. What was the other one that really grabbed you? Because I'm trying to say, when you run, you're running for a reason. I get that the politics part, you've made it already clear, even without going into even more detail,
Right.
that these politics and these parties, doesn't matter whether you're Democrat, Republican, Green, they're all politicians and they're juxtaposing and not dealing with it. But
Well,
here we are. Go
well,
ahead.
it's not. No, I was gonna say it's not just that. I mean, what I look at it's behavior. It's a society, like a structure, the way we look at things. It's your churches, your schools. It's all the same thing. That's why people get away with doing things, because we excuse certain behavior with those around us, and we're not taught to say, hey, that's wrong, or how to deal with things. We're bullied. We're gaslit. We're told to shut up. And I mean, it's the same thing that happens in church, like say churches, schools, wherever you want to go, organizations with this. With the hierarchy kind of thing. So my thing is about trying to walk people to understanding these behaviors. So propaganda is a big thing. Like people are seeing the propaganda in a different way on the right, using because of Russiagate. So it doesn't mean that they're not being propagandized in their own way. It just means that I look at it like that eventually, if they're realizing how deep in depth the propaganda is, that if they start applying that to everything, that then we're eventually going to get to the same thing. Because if you watch Jimmy Dore, right, there's a lot of things that Jimmy Dore talks about that really resonates with people that are libertarians or Trump supporters, because he gets a lot of people from, they don't always agree with him on policy or on everything. But just to see that there are places that just calling out the bullshit brings people together, that to me that excites me. And I know that there's a way to do this through music, because I grew up in Tennessee. Dad's a preacher. I grew up in this bubble, right? And I never thought that I was prejudiced in any way. But it wasn't till I moved to Miami at 25, that I understood that I'm really ignorant on culture, that I'm really ignorant on people, that I'm ignorant in myself, because my whole perspective has to do with the bubble and the people around me. So as I'm learning these other cultures and being accepted, and I actually started doing a bunch of hooks for a bunch of hip hop artists, is going around and experiencing something totally different than I would have experienced in Tennessee. It allowed me again to see a pulse, a thread of something that most people don't get to see, and especially to be accepted and to be able to go somewhere and feel comfortable and get out of that fear box that's kind of created. I felt like, okay, if I see this world, and I could see this world, and I understand like where the ignorance lies, because it's always to a degree, right? So the fear drum may be talking truth, but it's only to a degree, right? If they're talking about Islamist extremists, that may be something that's to fear, but it may be only to a small degree. But the way the media hits it to, they hyper focus on it 99%, and then that's what completely makes somebody afraid of something. So I spent so much time arguing with friends, family, and people really that I didn't know, but mainly friends and family, and trying to understand like why I keep butting heads and all this kind of different stuff. And I was getting emotionally triggered and getting caught up in these propaganda things where I'm supposed to, and eventually I got to the point where I really started to understand the pulse, the thread, the theme of what's going on. So I tried to look at people and what they're trying to say, or why they feel the way that they feel, or how they're processing the information. So I'm not just blanketing people, because that's the problem. I mean, we're all blanketing people, and we're not necessarily giving people a chance to work through their ignorances sometimes. So understanding art, understanding all these different things, I felt like I could connect in, because I'm not afraid to admit my mistakes, I guess. And that's something you don't see.
Well, philosophy wise and discussion wise, politics, I can see you're a valuable, important part in the discussion. I'm trying to look practically. Excuse me. I'm gonna have to turn my phone off. I forgot. All right. Um, there we go.
You know, like
I'm
moves that I'm going to
thinking
make.
like, here we are. I'm making you president. Bingo. Okay, what? Give me an idea what changes you're going to make. Because I mean, we're at a point where we are in the middle of. We can name 10 crises going on. Just environmental crises. Foods. I'm here in Hawaii. 90% of our food is imported. You'd think at some point they'd get it. Hey, start really be self-sustainable about that. We look at the country. We see all these food things being broken up. They close a meat plant. They close another plant. Farmers dumping produce. If everyone isn't realizing that things are shifting, they are. So here you are. I'm now making you president. We saw President Trump do things like appoint Ben Carson in housing and urban development. What? We saw Betsy DeVos going into education. I mean, I'm just getting specific. We see they bring on the Mike Pompeo out of the Senate, and now he's the Secretary of State, and you wonder what the hell's he doing there? And you all kinds of things. So here we are. We're turning you into the president. Any things that you would do? I mean, if someone's going to look at you, they have to say, if I'm going to vote green by itself, that's big. But what is it about this candidate that I'm going to really see? He really has it on the ball. He knows he sits where I sit. He's going to move the dial this way a little bit or a lot. But that's what I'm trying to get at.
Well,
I'm really trying to be practical in this, if you will, because we are that neutral zone. We can talk about this stuff, but in this election year with this highly charged atmosphere, I'm just trying to single out on some of your action steps that would be important.
Cannabis legalization first. You know, that's what I was saying. Like the cannabis butterfly effect, because of everything that's connected to it when it comes to prison reform, criminal justice, healthcare. Of course, we can talk about hemp and all the benefits there. So I want to be able to redirect how we're using our energy and how we're looking at things. So first of all, we're going to get rid of healthcare for profit. And I want to break that down into a preventative, preventative, diagnostic, to treatment and to cure. So we need to work on focusing on tech and using technology in order to organize our resources. That's the key, is organize our resources. And we could separate it into two things. One thing is we have to look at it is like, at the end of the day, we don't know what's going to happen. We could have a solar flare. We could have something happen, a volcano, could erupt, and we can, it screw us up. So we need to have a contingency plan in place for everybody to be straight, which means everybody needs to be housed, food, clothed, educated. So there's so many resources in this country. I would focus on reclaim, renew, reuse, and repurpose everything. So all these old houses, old buildings, we repair them and we rebuild them up. We learn how to break them down. Of course, we use and make stuff. We've got so much plastic that we can 3D print stuff with. There's so many resources that we have. We're just not understanding how to use it. And by using the phone, by using our technology, we can connect all these things. We need to have all these things in place where, again, communities are able to have be self-sustaining in these types of crisis. I mean, we should really have something in place, and really connect the country with the city, state by state, and have a real organization. And I think that's something that the Green Party can do even without even being in office. So it's about framing things with the co-ops and stuff. But part of this, I go with this philosophy thing because it really does have to do with trust. We don't trust, and we're asking questions just because we don't trust the narrative. We don't trust what anybody says. And it's what they say, a long habit of not thinking a thing wrong gives it a superficial appearance of being right. And then, that's the other problem. So it's approaching these issues as a country, as a unit, to be able to really gain trust, because what the problem is the information and how to process it. We're not getting that. So as a president, I would release a lot of information that would illuminate everything that's been going on. So when you illuminate certain things like that, and it validates what people are feeling, that gaslit, that, because I really feel like one of the things that they're doing, because you see, and I know I'm jumping all over the place,
No,
but you
it's all
see,
right. I'm seeing you as a policy guy. I'm seeing, in other words, if I asked you to be a leader, so far I haven't heard you say, I would have the troops stand down and I would address the country and tell them this, and this, and here's what we're going to do, and we're going to get money into your pocket because we're in the middle of this thing where our economy shut down. We have so many things going on now, and I'm watching a narrative where there's no clear, decisive leadership that makes people feel confident, that makes them feel confident that we're going to slow the violence in the street and yet get to the narrative and be doing something. So right. I'm really looking at you, maybe it's unfair, but I'm trying to get a feeling for what you'd be able to do now as president.
Think about it. I mean, it's influence. I mean, you've got Kendall Jenner made $1 million per post on Instagram, $1 million per post. Like, so having social media, this is something that the party could do in general, is really be present, really be providing value for people's lives. So we have to give framework for people to live these quality of life. We have enough land, we have enough old houses, we have enough resources. We should be distributing it and building our infrastructure and building or creating a blueprint that allows us to, again, pass it off to the world so they could see how it works. Because if we're a melting pot, then we're supposed to be the example of how things can really change.
Do you have a place anywhere up on the net? Especially in this time where we can't go belly to belly, a place where people can see your direction and policy? Where would that be?
chadwilson.us. And as far as I'm for I feel like some of these things we talk about are so natural for universal healthcare, healthcare for all. I mean, healthcare for nonprofit is how I look at it. Get rid of Glass-Steagall, or reinstall Glass-Steagall, get rid of Citizens United, overturn Citizens United, these basic things that, I feel like we all agree with, that are supposed to be natural. I'm looking at it from the perspective of, okay, we know what we want for the most part. It's, when you go too deep into the just policy types and numbers and all this kind of stuff, I feel like I feel like we're missing the ball a little bit, because we have to build the energy of how to get there. Because I think we already know what we want. You know what I mean? And I think, you could even see through this pandemic that people were okay with getting their stimulus check. That's a form of socialism. So it's all about how it's framed, how the narrative is set. And we talk about that. And I said, funny? As Ocean's 11, like, everybody's okay with Ocean's 11. Everybody does what their expertise is for the common goal. No one calls it socialism.
That's another movie reference. Some of the people don't know what Ocean's 11 is. Right. Ocean's 11 is a reference to a movie where if you're trying to do something and everyone does their little job, You get the job done. That's what you're talking about, their area of expertise.
And it makes people feel comfortable, because we get caught up on these isms, we get caught up on these different things. And so that's where like language is so important. So when we address people, one of the things I want to do is again, address cultures and identities, because of the way the propaganda is set up and the identity politics is that we've, created these clear lines in these cultural bubbles that it's important to use language and understand the pulse of those culture bubbles, because the things that people don't understand, it's hard to explain without being in one culture. And then I guess it's different towns. Look at it like that. You go to a different town, they operate differently. The people are different. Everybody, if you're like to go out and drink, bars are different, nightclubs are different, depend on the culture. So we need to understand how to really process and analyze information and have an evolution revolution, a conscious evolution. See, I really do think it has to do with more about the culture than it does about the policy, because unless people feel something different or see a vision of something different, it doesn't necessarily feel real sometimes.
Well, because we're believe it or not, we've been almost talking an hour. Amazing to see. We're talking, and I appreciate the conversation, but here you are, you've got an audience of the world out there, and I'm giving you a platform. If you were to let them know who you are, where to find you, what you want them to know, and why to vote for you. How's that?
There we go. ChadWilson.us, or you can go to Chad Wilson 2020 at Facebook or Twitter or Instagram. I spend a lot of time on Facebook. That's kind of where the Green Party does most of its discussions. And it's, of course, Twitter some too. So you can find me there and interact with me directly. But for me, I want to see the party grow. I'm about the team, and I'm about having a real viable third party, a real viable party that allows real discussion, honesty, and opens the door for everyone. So my focus has been on the party for the primary in order to get it ready for the general. So I want people to be able to go look and see, of course, where I started and where we are now, and of course by the time the primary is over, to see what I've been able to do as thus far just on my own. And one of the big things I tried, I wanted to show is what can be done without even spending any money. And I've done so much without it, and we could do so much together using the internet and just creating something to go viral, all sharing the same thing at the same time, all giving the same message out at the very same time, directing our energy at the same thing at the very same time. And we saw how Epstein, the whole, Epstein didn't kill himself and stuff like that. We have to be very clever and really hip on the way that we reach people and the way that we get them engaged. So I want the Green Party to totally revolutionize politics, and it to be a place to communicate and to feel comfortable regardless of the political spectrum, because you need to be welcome. We're the values are for you too. It's not just for us. So.
Well, Chad, I appreciate you coming on the show here with me, and I hope that our audience realizes the opportunity to get up close with you. Chad Wilson is one of the serious candidates for President of the United States from the Green Party, and whether or not you win the election, your voice is powerful, and thank you for running and getting your ideas up there. And I hope that you can become an integral part in the development of the Green Party to be able to get the kind of things that you and many of us realize is important, which is better open communication and all the things that you've been talking about. I really appreciate having you here today. Anything that you want to say, like a last thing to the people over the audience here?
Yeah, right now, we the Green Party should have a marching band. We should have people out showing up and adding value, adding energy, and adding adding real compassion through art and music. So that's one of the things that I want to do with the Green Party is commission a Green Party marching band. So anytime there's protests, anytime that there's anything going on, we can show up and give people the hype they need. So
Okay.
Thank you much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Oh, it's a pleasure. And I hope that through this election season, people get a chance to see you and your philosophy. And if an opportunity and they feel akin to your heart, that they pull the lever and vote. And that's a really big one to me. I hope more people get out there and express themselves and not just sit back home in their armchair and think there's enough people voting. If you're not voting, it's not enough people.
Right. Absolutely. Well, and voting is only one way to apply pressure. I mean, the revolution is going to have to be more than just the ballot box, but we need the pressure. So vote.
Vote. Thank you, Chad. Thank you very much.
You.
And thank all you guys out there for watching. And anything that you want to say, you can say to me directly or to Chad at chadwilson.us. What was the other one?
At chadwilson2020.
chadwilson2020.com. Okay. Thank you all for joining us. We will see you again. Thank you, Chad.
Thank you, man.
Aloha, everyone.